Good morning, educators and students. I'm glad to host you for this Zoom meeting about ESL. We will learn a few things regarding ESL. This will be in the green heading boxes that you will see in the presentation, PowerPoint presentation. All right, so let's start. First one is an introduction to ESL. Now, why is ESL chosen compared to a few of the other available English systems that there are right now? We will get into that. Let's do this first. ESL will offer learners the opportunity to develop practical communication skills. These generally come under 4 subsettings: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The basic components that someone needs, especially a student needs, to speak English, communicate effectively, especially in real-world conversations. Now, the following aims describe the purposes of a course that is based on the IGCSE syllabus. First one, for learners to develop the ability to use English effectively to communicate practically. So when you're talking to someone in public, for you to speak simple but effective English so that the person understands what you are trying to say or what you're trying to ask. Second one, to form a solid foundation for the skills that you require for further study or future employment when you use English as a medium. The third point, to develop the learner's awareness of the nature of the language and language learning skills. Other languages, you might pick it up in a slightly different way. English will be done in a particular way. We'll be going into that later in the PowerPoint presentation. And finally, for those who are learning English the IGCSE way, to learn personal development. All right. Now, moving on to the overview of the content. Students who are learning ESL will be presented with different stimuli that will build up your skills in reading and writing especially. They will learn to select relevant skills and details to understand the difference between what is directly stated and implied. You may ask your teachers to further expand on that and practice writing for different purposes and audiences. Again, at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, we'll be going into tips for students that will cover the audiences and different writing purposes. Learners also will listen to a range of spoken material, including talks and conversations, in order to develop listening skills. Now, these are short passages you will listen to. They are especially created in an exam format. You will you'll be made aware of certain accents, most commonly the British accent, and you will also hear a few other accents. And finally, learners will engage in conversations on a variety of topics. This is to develop your skills in responding to different situations. Again, to get you used to responding in real life situations. No matter how much English you practice in theory, when you go out in the real life, you will be responding to someone else's questions or statements. And how you respond to that is what IG will teach you to do. So you'll respond to different audiences with a certain degree of accuracy and clarity. Accuracy means speaking the same point that someone else has started. Otherwise, there's no point to a conversation. If you're talking about ABC and the other person is talking about fish, it's not connected. Clarity is also something we stress for your speaking tests and your practice. Pronunciation, intonation. All right. Ultimately, the goal is to enable learners to become independent users of English and to communicate effectively in practical contexts. Practical context means depending on where you use your English to respond and to speak accurately and appropriately. All right, next slide. The following few slides will go through the content of your ESL 0510 and the required responses from students during the course, and especially when you're doing your papers. All right, number one, the most important, reading. A lot of stress is given to reading, and you will see it in the past year papers or any papers that you will sit for. So for the extended papers, students are required to understand factual information. Factual information is pure, cold, hard facts. These are confirmed pieces of information. You have abstract ideas, arguments from a range of texts, including leaflets, articles, blogs, and web pages. You're also required to identify information and select correct details from a wide range of texts. So you will get a comprehension passage. You will have questions based on the passage. The questions will direct you to look for specific pieces or piece of information that you need to answer. Students are also required to identify ideas, opinions, and attitudes from a wide range of texts and understand how these are connected. If you're talking about an electric car, connected information will be what is the range, how long is the charging time, simple things like this. What are connected pieces of information? And finally, understand what is implied but not directly stated. Implied but not directly stated. So implied information and stated information are very different things. John is going to the mall. Mary is going to meet John. Does it imply that Mary is going to the mall as well? Yes. Next one. The second part concerns writing. Again, for the extended paper, students are required to know communication through factual information. When you are writing, example, if you're writing about the latest iPhone, you have to present facts as they are because you do not create the facts. You did not create the phone. The phone was created by a certain company in a certain country, released on a certain date. All these facts are true. You cannot change them any way you like. You have to present factual information as it is. Again, same thing from the last content. Abstract ideas and arguments, but with good expansion. You need to be able to expand your explanation or your details regarding certain points. If you say, this particular car is more efficient than another one, give reasons why. Be able to explain, justify. Secondly, select and organize relevant information and ideas into coherent paragraphs. This means when you're writing any essay for that matter, doesn't matter on the type of essay, you have an order of things, most commonly a chronological order, how things are done. And use a range of appropriate linking devices. Now, I will explain linking devices in 2 more slides. Also, when writing, students are required to respond to a written stimulus. That means you will have a question and you have to respond to that question by writing something and use appropriate registers and style format. So, when you're writing a letter to a friend, it's going to be an informal letter. When you're writing a formal letter, it's going to be to the head of a company, the head of your school, someone in authority. Students also need to produce written text with a wide range of language structures. Now, grammatical and lexical, I will explain this in 2 more slides as well. You have to produce written text that show very good control of punctuation and spelling. Some of the most common mistakes students make, not just ESL, but 1, 1, 2, 3, are punctuation. Most students use the most common punctuations, full stops, commas, exclamations. But very few students use the semicolon, colons, and spelling. The only way to improve is by reading and constantly writing and correcting your mistakes. Moving on to the next slide. This is the listening part, part 3. Again, under the extended paper, you have to understand factual information. In the listening passage, they might give you an excerpt of a news article. Certain number of people were injured when there was a gas leak resulting in an explosion. So the number of people has been reported. It has become factual information. Remember facts as they are. Again, abstract ideas, arguments. Now, examples of your listening sources will be recorded phone messages, announcements, dialogues, conversations, usually informal, and interviews, which are formal conversations. A variety of voices and accents will also be heard in the recordings and will reflect on the audio that is presented. Next one, under listening. You must identify relevant information and select the correct details from a wide range of sources. When you are given your listening transcript, your answer paper, you will require to fill these in. The next point, students have to identify ideas, opinions, and attitudes from a wide range of sources and understand the connections between them. Now, how do you understand someone's attitude? Listen for the tone of voice. How loud is it? If you ask someone a question and they respond really soft, or do they respond really loud? Are they aggressive? Is the response something polite? Is it disrespectful? Is it rude? All these you can hear in the tone of voice. And finally, for listening, you have to understand what is implied but not directly stated, as we have covered in the second part. Moving on to the next slide. Speaking. This will be the final slide for the content part. So for speaking, you have to communicate factual information, again, abstract ideas, arguments. You have to organize and link your ideas with a range of appropriate linking devices. Now, what are appropriate linking devices? Words that connect sentences, they connect similar points. Words like additionally, furthermore, although, however, as a result. Okay, these are examples. For speaking, you have to engage in a conversation on a wide range of topics: natural environments, arts, science, global issues. You have to think creatively and think quickly. Now, I will explain what's grammatical and lexical here. During the speaking section, you have to produce responses with a wide range of language structures. Now, grammatical shows how you obey the rules of grammar. When you are using the past tense, generally words have an ed. When you're talking in the future, when you're talking about the future tense or writing about the future tense, you will use the correct words like will or will be going, might be going. Right. Lexical means relating to the vocabulary of the language. All right. Finally, for speaking, you have to produce responses that show good control of pronunciation and intonation. Normally, when you have a conversation, your intonation is more pleasant to listen to compared to someone who is droning on and on. Droning has very bad intonation. It's very flat. A normal intonation during conversation will have a lot of ups and downs. You say, good morning. You don't just say, good morning, how are you today? No. Proper intonation during your practice sessions with your teacher will teach you how to have good intonation in your regular conversations. All right, moving to the next part is format and details. So all candidates will take 3 components. We'll be looking at the middle column for the extended paper. Extended candidates will take paper 2, paper 4, and component 5, which is the speaking component. Now, paper 2 is 2 hours long, makes up 70% of your marks, and consists of 80 marks. There are 6 exercises that will test your reading and writing skills. Paper 4 is much, much shorter. Approximately 50 minutes, makes up 30% of your marks, and has a total mark of 40. For your paper 4, you have to listen to short extracts and longer texts, and complete a range of task types, including short answer questions, gap filling, MCQs, and note making. And then component 5 is your speaking. The marks for this are recorded separately. It takes approximately 10 to 15 minutes overall time, of which 6 to 9 minutes are your assessed time. This follows the 2 to 3 minute warm-up conversation, and the examiner will discuss a variety of topics that he will choose. Moving on to the next slide. This is an overview of exercises in paper 2. For exercise 1, your reading, you have a total of 13 marks. Exercise 2, multiple matching, is 10 marks. Exercise 3, note making, is 9 marks. Exercise 4 has marks for reading and writing, balanced, 8 marks for a total of 16. Exercise 5 tests your writing skills only for a total of 16 marks, and the same goes with exercise 6. All these together add up to 80 marks. Moving on to the next section, descriptions of the exercises in your ESL paper. All right. For exercise 1, we can skip the assessment objective column. For exercise 1, it is a reading exercise. Candidates will read a text and answer questions based on the text. Answers are in single words or phrases. Do not answer in full sentences. All right? Now, the type of text that you will be given can be any one of the following: an article, a blog, or sample web page. The marks allotted for exercise 1 is 13. For exercise 2, it is also a reading exercise. You have to read a text again, answer questions again. But the comprehension section will be more detailed. You have to match the answers to the questions. And the type of text here will be a continuous text divided into a few sections or paragraphs, or a number of shorter texts. Total marks for exercise 2 is 10. For exercise 3, the task here will be taking notes, note making. Students will make brief notes for the heading that you will be provided with, relating to a text that they give you. Text types here will be typically an article or just text that you usually see in newspapers and magazines. Marks allotted for exercise 3, 9 marks. Moving on to exercise 4, summary writing. You will write a summary about aspects or anything that they require given in a question in the question paper. Again, the sample text here will be from articles or just plain text, like from a newspaper or magazine. This will be divided into 2 parts, 8 marks, 8 marks, for a total of 16 marks. Exercise 5, your first essay. You need to write an essay of approximately 150 to 200 words in response to the question provided in the paper. The question will include information on purpose of you writing the essay, the format of your essay, and the audience. So you will have to adjust accordingly. We will go through this in the tips section at the end of the PowerPoint presentation. For exercise 6, you will write a report, an article, or a review in response to a short stimulus or short prompts given in the question paper. This includes information on why you are writing it, your purpose, format of your writing, and the audience, which are very different from exercise 5. This also has been given 16 marks and 2 sections, 8 marks, 8 marks. All right, moving on to the next slide. For paper 4, you have 5 questions. Exercise 1 is 8 marks. The text type is either recorded phone messages or brief dialogues. These dialogues can be formal or informal, can be between 2 or 3 people. And the task here is for candidates to listen to the short extracts, answer questions for each one. The questions require short answers, no longer than 3 words each. So remember, do not write full sentences, short answers. Exercise 2, 8 marks. You listen to a talk and complete gaps in the sentences or in the notes. Text type here is a formal talk. So make a note of the manner in which they speak and usually the vocabulary they use. Exercise 3. Candidates listen to 6 short audio passages and match each to the appropriate content and number on your paper. The text type here will be short, informal monologues. Marks for this section, 6 marks. For exercise 4, you will listen to a discussion between 2 speakers and answer 3 multiple choice questions. This is an informal discussion with the host to introduce the discussion. Marks allotted for exercise 4 will be 8 marks. For exercise 5, candidates listen to a talk and complete gaps in notes and sentences, similar to exercise 2. And then they will listen to a short discussion based on this talk and complete gaps in sentences using no more than 3 words. This, unlike exercise 4, is a formal talk, followed by an informal discussion. Marks allotted for exercise 5, 10 marks. In our next slide, we will be getting a description of the exercise in the speaking paper, paper 5. So, the speaking test will take approximately 10 to 15 minutes and is as follows. For the first 2 to 3 minutes, the student is not assessed. It is a warm-up conversation. The examiner will talk to you about general matters just to get you warmed up. And then that is the time for the candidate to read the speaking card. Your examiner will give you a speaking card and you have to prepare a response. You may not write notes during this phase. Okay, this is approximately 2 to 3 minutes. You will have your reading card. You will read, formulate your thoughts, your responses, but you cannot write anything. And finally, will be the assessed conversation. That is between 6 and 9 minutes. Candidates are not allowed to use dictionaries, and candidates will be assessed using the speaking assessment criteria grid that we will see in the following slides. For your speaking, marks are given out of 10 for 3 categories: structure, vocabulary, and development and fluency. 10 marks for each. These will be added up to give you an overall total of 30. Okay, moving to the next slide. Marking criteria. So the first column shows structure, the second column shows vocabulary, and the third column shows development and fluency. So for a mark of 9 to 10, which is almost full marks to full marks for that category, candidate has to use a range of structures accurately and consistently, and is confident in the control of these structures. Basically, a student has to present his points and be confident in the points and provide secondary points. All right. Now, these details can be found on the IG website. And I'm not going to go into very detail because these are something that you just need to read up. So this slide shows the lower range of marks. So if a candidate is getting 3 to 4 marks for structure, they have used very simple limited structures. Their vocabulary is restricted with a small range, difficulty in conveying simple ideas, and likely to hesitate or to repeat certain words or always be thinking to search for words. For fluency, the candidate is unable to go beyond certain responses and has to be continuously prompted by the examiner. All right. Now, reading and writing tips. The following are a few general reading and writing tips that can be used for all students, but there will be specific tips for ESL students. So generally, think about how you are going to manage your time even before you start the exam. This can be done months before your exam. Managing your time, managing your schedule. For your exam, you need to leave enough time to complete exercises 4, 5, and 6. Because 4, 5, and 6 will require the most time since you'll be doing the most writing. Comprehension passages are very cut and dry. Read, identify the key points, answer it, put it in the correct question. Put in the correct answer. For exercises that test your reading, read quickly. I'm sure you'll be familiar with what it means to skim through the text. Concentrate on finding the main idea in each paragraph. You will need to reread relevant sections or to scan. Scanning and skimming are 2 skills that students need. Skimming is going through it really quick, get the gist of it. Scanning is to look for specific pieces of information. Now, equally important is your handwriting. Because when you complete exercises, just go back one slide. Okay, when you complete your exercises, you have to write names and other proper nouns. Examiners are looking for the correct use of capital letters with nouns. So you must make this clear when you write. Okay, next slide. Okay, the 3 exercises of the ESL paper mainly test your reading comprehension skills. Here are some tips for that. Underline the question or the word that you think about what it means. Where means a place. How means in what way. And why means look for a reason or cause. So you want to underline the question word. Where, how, why. Next, match the words in the question with the correct place in the text. When you locate the sentence that has the answer you're looking for, read it carefully to find the exact answer, or in some cases, the most accurate answer. If you cannot match any of the words, do remember that the word in question might be a synonym of the word in the text. So try and think of a word with a similar meaning. Next one, very important point, not just for these exercises, but in general, don't write full sentences in your answer. Don't. Use one word or short phrases. As long as your answer is accurate, you will get the marks you deserve. The dotted line on the question paper gives you a guide about how much to write. Very true. If you see a single line, indicates single word answer, short phrase. If you see 2 lines, definitely more than a single word answer. Short phrase as well, possibly longer than 3 words, but not a full sentence. Do remember that too much writing can waste your time. And if you give too much information, you might include details that are not correct or not necessary. And this could cause you to lose marks. All right? Next one. For some of you who have difficulty using your own words, it's not just you. Not everybody can be expressive or can rephrase easily. In that case, you can copy the words from the text. If you write your own words, you won't lose a mark as long as you include the correct information. You will see this in summaries. Next slide. So coming to summaries, very importantly is keeping to the word limit. Now, summary writing tests both reading and writing skills. What did you read? How can you reproduce that in a shorter format? How good are you at rephrasing? Now, adhering or sticking to the specific word limit is important, as going too much beyond the limit can affect marks for both your content and the language you use. Now, for summaries, examiners will look for responses that show you understand the text and to some extent are able to paraphrase the main ideas, right in your own words. If you cannot change 3, change at least 1. The focus here for students should be accuracy, cohesion, and not exceeding the word limit. Now, next part. How do you write an effective summary? Of course, this is a shortened version. You begin by working out what the summary you are going to write about. What is it about? The overall picture, the general topic. Then read through the text really quickly. Just skim through. Get a handle or get a feel of what the story is about. While doing that, identify the paragraphs that contain the information that you can use. So there are 2 parts. You have the key points and then you have secondary points. Identify the key points. But you also need secondary points to drive your story. Reread these paragraphs and underline the important points that you can use. Okay, next slide. For writing exercises, you must develop your own ideas. Some languages like BM, for people who are not so fluent, your teacher will encourage you to memorize phrases, figures of speech. You can do the same. Now, the last two exercises in the ESL exam, exercise 5 and 6, are purely writing exercises. Exercise 5 usually requires you to write something informal and to develop all the bullet prompts they provide in the question paper. Exercise 6 is different because you'll be writing a formal essay. And you are required to use persuasive language to convince the reader of your opinions. For or against is up to you, and you can write accordingly. Now, for both writing exercises, you must make sure to do these things. Number one, keep to the topic. The minute you stray from the topic, you're wasting words. And when you start wasting words, you will most often cross the word limit. So keep to the topic because it is easy to wander away from the topic or the subject you are given. And remind yourself constantly by looking at the question, reading it, and telling yourself that you need to stick to the topic. Stick to the points. Don't stray too far. You must also remember to include details, explanations, and expand your ideas. If you put forth a point that says such and such is a more desirable option, explain why you say that, if it is your opinion. Or if you want to state fact, state why people prefer one option over the other. For the content mark, the examiner is looking at the development of your writing, that you're able to put forth points, expand on them, and connect them to other relevant points. Right? Next slide. For exercise 5 and 6, mastering your writing skills will earn you points. So we will go over that in the writing tips below. So exercises 5 and 6, you will respond to a stimulus, basically the question they've given you. And this will encourage you to write. You may or may not get a picture or pictures, which will give you maybe some ideas, some inspiration. Or you may be given a list of things to write about. You will be given information about why you are writing, who your audience is, and what form you should use. So remember, exercise 5 and 6, one will cover informal and one will cover formal. Okay, the following are detailed tips for students. Number 1, for exercise 5, tip number 1, think who you are writing to. Try to write as if you are talking to this person. And you'll automatically use the correct tone and register. Remember to use informal words and phrases. Remember to use contractions. Instead of using I am, use I'm. Instead of using I have, use I've. Instead of asking a question, how are? And will not, you can use won't. Remember to write at least one paragraph for each of the bullet points provided in your question paper, which will be given as guidance. This will give you a good writing balance. You might lose marks if your paragraphs don't contain enough key points. Moving on to the next slide. So this will be the recommended writing structure. For the introduction and the conclusion, keep it below 20 words. For paragraphs 2, 3, and 4, between 50 and 60 words. So paragraph 2 will contain all your points for bullet point 1. Paragraph 3 will contain all the information for bullet point 2. And paragraph 4 will contain your details for bullet point 3. Do remember, as you are writing, you must have you must have a build-up of information. Why? Because that's how you develop a story. That's how you develop something interesting for the other person to read. There must be a build-up of information. All right, finally, the usage of the following three will determine which band you fall in. Usage of idioms, phrasal verbs, similes. I'm sorry I've not written this letter. I've not replied your letter in a long time. I've been as busy as a bee. Okay? I heard you're down in some holiday island having a blast. Do remember to use these in all your essays. Idioms, phrasal verbs, similes. Make sure you choose one that suits your narrative. Do not use the wrong one. For our next slide, moving on to tips for exercise 6, formal writing. Now, these are a little more detailed, so please pay attention. You are given a topic or usually a question that will make you think or reflect on a certain idea or a topic on which you have to write your views and opinions. Now, this can either be two-sided, meaning you have for and against, an advantage, a disadvantage, or a one-sided article where it is just your opinion. This is up to you to decide. Deciding which one to write will be covered in the next few slides. Now, for the topics, these are usually easy enough for any student to come up with the right points during the exam. But it is strongly recommended that you keep up with your reading about various issues from around the world. What is the latest news? What are the current events? Technological breakthroughs. What are the latest news in sporting events? Especially in Malaysia, we follow badminton a lot. We follow football a lot. What are medical breakthroughs? What about the latest? What is the latest news about influenza? What is the latest strain of COVID? What are the medical emergencies around the world? And environmental issues. Okay, for the next slide, we will talk about some of the other tips you can use, but it all starts with you coming up with a plan. You must have a plan, otherwise you'll be wasting a lot of time and you'll be unable to complete your exercises 5 and 6. So here are a few questions to help you plan the right path. Who is my audience going to be? For your IG paper, exercise 6, it is always, okay, it is very common for the question paper to make it a school magazine. It's a very common question. So your language, tone, and your vocabulary should reflect this. Now, if you are speaking to a much younger person, maybe a small child, you will need to adapt your vocabulary accordingly, correct? The same thing when you're speaking to your peers or your seniors, adapt your language accordingly. Next question, is my article going to be two-sided or one-sided? So you might be asking, teacher, when do I write a two-sided? When do I write a one-sided article? All right. If you have read the topic that they have given you, and if you know a lot about the topic, you are able to weigh the pros and the cons, go for a two-sided article. Why? Because you have knowledge about the topic, you can discuss both sides equally. You can present your points for this side, present your points for this side, and you have enough writing material to give you marks. But if the topic is unfamiliar to you, it's something that you've heard about but you don't know in detail, then stick with a one-sided article. Okay, moving on to the next slide. All right, the next question, number 3. How do I introduce the topic? Now, a lot of you have problems starting essays, which is common. Now, let's start with this. How do I introduce the topic? Start off by saying what the topic is and how important the topic is in today's world. So we're talking about technology. What is the technology you're going to talk about? how it is important in today's world or today as compared to 10 years ago. And then you must follow this up with why. Why? Because you need points to justify, to explain, to give more description, to give more details. So why it is a problem, or if it is even a problem. Next question. What do I write in the body paragraph of my essay? For a one-sided article, you should write a minimum of 3 points. Expand these points equally to match your word limit. For a two-sided article, write down 2 pros and 2 cons, 2 advantages, 2 disadvantages. Again, make sure your word count matches accordingly. You will develop your body paragraphs based on the points. If you are provided with certain points or hints, use that. Develop your body paragraphs of your essay. Okay, next one. How do I conclude my article? When you conclude your article, you're giving your opinion at the end. And this is a must. But before that, you must sum up all your points and then give your final opinion. Even if you have written a two-sided article where you have weighed pros and cons, the conclusion or the final say is yours. And of course, please always check your writing once you're done. If you are done, if you have completed your exam a little earlier, check it a second or a third time. And we have come to the end of this ESL workshop. Thank you.